Edinburgh in August means three things: a good chance of rain, the Fringe Festival taking over the city, and flyers. I managed my way past each to meet up with Elinor Evans, who invited me around to chat about the traditional Scottish harp, the Clarsach. But you were saying earlier that there's a bit of there's an interesting point of the naming of it, because you would call it a harp as well.
I would call it a harp as well. Also, it goes by lever harp, Celtic harp, folk harp, anything. Some people call it the small harp, but I don't like that.
The small harp.
It's one of those things we can call it a small harp, but other people don't.
Right. Okay. So it's a community thing. Yeah. So I mean, what you mentioned was that it's a set of levers, like what a lot of people will think of when they think of a harp is the big,
yep.
What do you call orchestral harp with the pedals?
Pedal harp.
Yeah.
Or orchestral harp, classical harp. What is the main difference is we don't have the pedals, we have levers. So the modern harps have mainly 34 strings. Some of them have 36 because they have 2 extra at the bottom. On each of our strings we have a lever, so every single string has its own lever, whereas on the pedal harp they have 47 strings and they have 7 pedals, so if you put down one C pedal it changes all of the C's on the harp. Right,
so here if you want to change all the C's you have to manually switch
do it.
Everything, yeah.
But in some ways it means that our harp is slightly more versatile in different ways, because we can change different octaves for different levers. So we can have different levers set in different octaves, so you can get 2 different keys or 4 different keys on your harp. Whereas on the pedal harp, you can't do that because all of your C's are the same. You can't change any of them unless you retune them.
Right. So let's get back to the Celtic connection, maybe, because people will know. I mean, Ireland has famously has their harp on their
Guinness.
Guinness. People will know it from Guinness. Yeah. But it has a tradition here in Scotland as well.
It does. The Clarsach, or the harp in Scotland, is the oldest instrument. It precedes the bagpipes, which many people don't actually realise. The harp was around before the bagpipes were around. The harp was the original instrument of war.
Okay.
But I thought that it would be a bit of a sitting duck.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's one of the things about the bagpipes that people say it's quite a scary sound. So
yeah, so it didn't travel as far. So I don't suppose they did very far. But I think that's probably why they changed it quite swiftly. Right. But yes, it was the original instrument of war.
Interesting. And you were saying it was like a courtly instrument as well.
It was. So it was played. Most big houses had a harpist that would play for all of their gatherings. They had their own harpist, and they would play for the dinners, the dances, everything, and that would be their job. That's what the harpist would do.
Sort of like the court musicians in Central Europe, string players and
exactly that.
Yeah, and so that do we know the oldest kind of records of when the harp was being played?
I think it was being played in the 15th and 16th century. That's when, but they were on the Pictish stones in the 9th or 8th century. They were depicted in the Pictish stones carvings.
Right.
But the oldest harps that are still around nowadays are from the 15th century, and they're in the National Museum of Scotland.
Right. Okay. And you're saying they're pretty pimped out there.
They're pretty decorated. They've got all the diamonds and jewels, and they're all colourful and everything, because they were made to be looked at, I suppose, to look great.
That's one thing that really always interests me, is the fact that we sort of forget that at the time music was so special, because you wouldn't be constantly bombarded with it. You're walking down the street like we.
No, I suppose here you can't walk 2 minutes without hearing music from somewhere, and in every shop there's music. But then, because there wasn't the recorded things, all of the music was live. So I suppose the reason why the harp looked grander was to make it more special as a spectator's sport as well.
Yeah, yeah. But tell us about the Clarsach in Scotland today.
The Clarsach in Scotland today. So the Clarsach Society was set up a number of years ago. The harp almost died out in the 18th century, and then the Clarsach Society was set up as a way for people to get instruments because they weren't being made anymore. But so the Clarsach Society rent them out at affordable prices. For most families can now afford to rent out a harp from the Clarsach Society. Harps are expensive to buy. So now loads of children are learning to do it just through the Clarsach Society. Has been a great help for that. And the harp is now at its most vibrant in Scotland.
Yeah, you mentioned that it almost died out, essentially.
It almost died out, yes.
Do we know the reasons behind that?
It was just due to, I don't know, a number of reasons. I don't think anyone really knows why. Just a number of historical reasons why it died out.
Yeah. And so the tradition, I guess was there much music written down for Clarsach?
So there wasn't many music written down, and because it almost died out, the music that was not written down was lost, effectively. So most of the music was lost. So as I was saying earlier, the way that you get music nowadays is that you arrange music from different instruments, and that's how most of the music is now brought from music from bagpipes, fiddles, accordions, singing. And they're all arranged now for the harp. So there are now quite a lot of folios that you can buy, and there's a harp festival every year, and people from all over the world come and share their music with everyone. So the music's getting wider and wider every
Interesting.
year.
What you said before about the about having a harp in a household, it sort of strikes me as something maybe similar to a piano, like something that maybe you don't have to be a virtuoso, and it's like exactly in the environment we are now. It's like a kind of a living room, drawing room kind of. It suits the space, in a family.
Especially this size of harp, I suppose. It fits in most houses, and it's more transportable.
And you studied composition. You're a composer on the Clarsach as well.
Yes, I suppose. I studied performance as my first degree in Glasgow, my undergrad in Clarsach. And then I went on and did my postgrad in composition and harp performance in Wales, which was very different.
Yes, yeah. And you were saying there that the harp has a different, obviously up here in Scotland and across with the Gaelic connection, like there's that sort of world, whereas maybe in Cardiff it's a little bit different.
In Cardiff it is a bit different. They mainly focus on the pedal harps and the triple harps.
What's a triple harp?
A triple harp is... So it's got 3 rows of strings. So it's got 2 outside, which are effectively the white notes of the piano, if you think about it that way. The 2 outside strings are the white notes, the ones in the middle are the black notes.
So it's essentially a chromatic.
It's a chromatic harp, yes. So you have to put your fingers in. So it's a very different technique.
Wow. And is that relatively rare? I don't even know if maybe I've seen one, but I wouldn't have remembered it.
It is relatively rare. There are a few people that play it all the time. That's their main instrument. Yeah, I tried it. It makes you go a little bit cross-eyed.
I can imagine, yeah. I'm wondering maybe if we can hear one of your pieces.
You can.
Yeah? What are we going to hear?
This is a slow air called The Sleeping Child.
Okay, and this is a piece of your composition?
It's a piece of my composition, yeah.
Lovely. Thanks for watching. Click on the links for more interviews, follow us on Facebook, or subscribe.